All right, everyone. We're going to get started here in a moment with the seminar. Hope you guys are doing well and having a happy Friday. Um, all is good on this end. It'll be just a second.
All
Just
right,
bear with me.
everyone. You get started here in a moment with the summit.
Sorry, I'm gonna make sure that we are got everyone here that's going to be attending and joining us today. So bear with me. We're going to get started right at 12 today. So if you're late, sorry. All right, 12 o'clock it is. So, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first time homebuyer seminar. Hope you're doing well. My name is Damon Bodine, and hope hope you guys find some value in this. We're going to be doing this today, and it should be about maybe 30 to 40 minutes. Let's see if there's any questions at the end. May go a little longer. Just bear with me. I'm working home today, guys, and we do have some construction going on in our apartment. So if you hear some random like drilling, kind of loud noises, that is why. Anyways, I hope you guys are doing well. I am gonna just go ahead and share my screen and just start kind of talking, just start walking you through our presentation, right? So we are going to be some stuff we don't need. So this is kind of the lunch break series. We're just talking, this is very basic concepts of first time home buying. So if you guys have already kind of been down that process, and you're already like working with lenders and out seeing houses and working with agents and things like that, you may not learn as much in this particular meeting. However, we do more advanced classes and things like that for people in the market that are sort of looking for that edge and stuff like that. Reach out to me if you guys would want to do those. And then, of course, if you just want to do a one-on-one, we're always happy to do that, right? So, one moment. Sorry, I'm gonna plug in.
Okay. All right. So today we are going to talk about just our agenda items are as follows, right? Talk about some common myths in the home buying process, the absolute first things to do when buying a home, talking to a lender, talking to a real estate agent, a little bit more about the home buying process, and we'll just answer some FAQs. All right. So your host today is me, Damon Bodine. I actually have 10 years experience. Forgive me, this is a little bit older of a presentation, but I am a real estate salesperson in New York City. I work all over the city. And have been worked with about 150 different home buyers over these 10 years, and then hundreds of renters and things like that as well. So I've done a little bit. My goal is always to help find client. Yeah, my goal is to help my clients find buying their home a clear, stress-free, and fun experience, right? Give you guys a little bit more about me and just kind of where I come from. I've been an entrepreneur for about 21 years now. In 2003, I started my first company. I was in the music industry for about 10 and a half years, concert promoter, A&R, tour manager, things like that, booking agent, had a lot of titles when I was in my 20s. But 2014, I broke into the real estate industry. I got a real estate license and just started kind of finding my way into it, right? Didn't really know too many people in New York. I'd grown up in Buffalo and had been only moved to New York a couple years prior. And, just kind of was figuring it out day by day, right? So, 2018, 5 years after that, I started to build a team. I had a lot more momentum in my career and things like that. And built a team with my wife, Rihanna. 2021, I got a mortgage loan originator license in 14 states. Wanted to just sort of expand my career a little bit and things like that. In 2022, we hit over $100 million in career sales. The only reason I bring that up is that throughout my career, I've worked with a lot of different price points and property types and things like that, right? So there's no task too big or too small, as they say, right? So, anyways, that's a little bit about me. And our mission statement is to empower home buyers to make great purchase decisions with an informational advantage and a fully supportive team. All right. So let's jump right into it. We're going to talk about common myths today, right? And the home buying process is pretty full of I don't know, it's just a lot of misconceptions, right? It's very hard to purchase a home, but one of the things about home ownership is that there's millions of transactions a year, right? So just because, like, for example, like a friend has this experience in their transaction may not mean that you're going to have the same experience in yours, right? Or just because an internet article is telling you it has to be done this way, it means you absolutely have to do that, right? Like there's a lot of flexibility in this world, right? And a lot of different ways to make it happen. All right. So what are the common myths? First, most common myth that I see all the time in real estate is that you need a 20% down payment in order to buy a home. That is definitely not true in many cases. Now, obviously, the disclaimer is you, of course, have to get a mortgage pre-approval, and the lender will tell you sort of what you can afford, things like that. But I will tell you, according to Zillow, um, only 38% of home buyers had a down payment of at least 20%. You'll see it's 20% had a down payment of exactly 20%, and 18% had a higher down payment, right? So that means that if you take 38%, that means that 62% of people did not put 20% down, right? So, you know, there's why is that myth? Why do people think that, right? What are the reasons why this myth is so common in the industry? Number one, I think that the mortgage industry has changed a lot in the last few decades. So, like, for example, if like your parents and grandparents were buying houses, in that period of time, maybe the products didn't exist to allow them to put down a lower down payment. There's also some property types that are, you know, like for example, if you're in New York City where I work, right, and you're looking at a cooperative apartment, right? Some co-ops will say in their specific bylaws and guidelines to purchasing that the building itself requires a minimum of 20% down payment or sometimes even higher, right? But just kind of breaking that down right now, there's a lot of opportunities out there that you do not need the full 20%. If you don't have it, obviously, it's unique to each person, specific scenario, but here we go. Okay. Number two, first up is looking at houses, right? So why do I say that? To me, real estate is a long-term investment, right? And you have to try to achieve two things simultaneously. Number one, you've got to make sure that the actual payments are something that you're comfortable with, right? And something that, you know, you and your family, you guys talk about in detail and like you can really afford, right? You don't want to be over leveraged in mortgage, right? So that a lot of that is impacted by rates, taxes, home insurance, repairs, things like that, right? So you should really get an idea of your mortgage options first to sort of have an idea of what you're working with, right? Doesn't mean you have to go through necessarily the whole pre-approval process and run credit and all that stuff, right? But you should at least engage conversations with lenders and even real estate agents who know a bit about the mortgage industry to kind of like work through that, right? The other reason is sometimes when you're just out looking at houses, right, you're kind of creating something where it's like you might, if you haven't done the back end work to sort of understand your financial scenario, understand that looking at houses is a very emotional process, right? So let's say that you guys are out looking at houses on like an open house weekend or something like that. No pre-approval, no real thought on like where your comfort level is, right? And you see a house that you absolutely love, right? Like you love so much that all of a sudden it's your mission, no matter what, to move into that house, right? I've seen this happen a lot over 10 years, right? Now, what you'll be trying to do from there is sort of shoehorn that process to make it work. You're like, okay, I got to find an agent. Okay, I got to find a mortgage lender. Okay, I got to figure this out. How am I going to sign a contract? Where's my escrow money? Da 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 da, right? And you're trying to do all this, right? And you may find scenarios where a lender is willing to give you the loan, right, for the property you want. But by taking that loan, you are now allowing yourself to be at a monthly payment threshold that you're pretty uncomfortable with, right? So I feel like you got to put the cart before the horse, as they would say, right? So having an idea of your structure and payments will help you a lot in order to make, smart and savvy decisions. And do not underestimate the amount of emotion that's in it's a part of being a homeowner, right? And part of buying a home, right? And don't overestimate your ability necessarily to be discerning in all of those moments, right? So that's another myth, right? Okay. Myth number three, you can't get a mortgage if you are self-employed. So I'll break that myth for you guys right now. I'm self-employed. My wife and I are. I'm sitting here talking to you in a home that we own, right? There are absolutely self-employed borrower mortgage loans out there, right? Sometimes the lender themselves has to be a little more creative in your scenario, right? But they're out there, they're doable, they're findable, things like that, right? So, the general rules, like they say, you should have around 2 years of self-employment income in the same industry, things like that, additional provisions of like stability of income, credit, etc. And your lender can walk through these scenarios, right? But you will definitely want to just start talking to people, right? And start finding lenders that understand your specific situation and can work with you, right? So you absolutely can get a mortgage if you're self-employed. I see it happen all the time. So, but very much a common myth, right? Okay. Myth number four is cheaper to rent than own. Okay. My disclaimer is this, right? That can be true in a lot of circumstances, especially with the current rate environment and the current price environment, right? And people will do the analysis, they'll do the rent versus own analysis, and they will say, oh man, it's way more expensive to have a mortgage right now, right? A lot of it depends, right? Where are you buying? What are you buying? How are you buying? How much are you putting down? Things like that, right? Excuse me. It also depends on what kind of things are working, what kind of rate are you getting, right? There's a lot of fluctuation right now in mortgage rates. This isn't a full mortgage seminar, so I'm not going to go deeply into this, but there can be situations in which you can buy down your interest rate to a lower amount. Those are called discount points. Sometimes the seller themselves is willing to help cover some of that cost, right? And I just wouldn't say that. I think you also have to factor in a lot of things here. Like, okay, how much equity are you gaining by doing that long-term debt pay down, right? On the other side, you have to figure out, hey, now I'm a homeowner, right? Okay, my landlord's not going to fix the, roof if it leaks, right? So what am I going to do? How am I budgeting for that as well, right? So when you're thinking about the homeownership process, right, you want to think about like in the rent versus buy, you want to ask yourself, like, okay, what's my long-term vision here, right? And what am I thinking about in that end? If you can do that, then usually things will. Um, sorry, 1 second. Oh, all right. Anyway, sorry, I thought someone had hopped on, but they popped off. All right. So, yep, hopefully that gives a perspective on that. Myth number five, your credit score needs to be perfect. Okay, pretty simple here, all right? Only 1% of Americans have a perfect credit score, but 62.9% own a home, right? So the thing about credit and to understand is that lenders will price loans based on credit risk sometimes, right? So your score certainly makes a big impact on the rate that you're going to get in a mortgage, right? But it doesn't have to be perfect in order for you to qualify for a mortgage, right? That's a common misconception. And I've actually seen some, you know, if there are some incentives that I've seen from the FHFA, Fannie Mae, that has talked about trying to help people even with lower credit scores get a mortgage, right? So there's some stuff in that. Again, this isn't a mortgage seminar, so we'll do a separate one for that, all those specific questions, but you definitely do not need to have a perfect credit score. Okay. Myth number six, all lenders are the same. And I believe that this is probably of all these different things I just talked about from a myth standpoint, the one that hurts people the most, right? And I think a lot of times this happens for a few reasons. Number one, there's so much bad financial education out there about mortgage on the internet. Just just garbage heaps of it, right? Lenders, no one lender has every mortgage product available in the market. They might say they do, they might, but they don't, right? There are different kinds of lenders out there. There are large banks, there are private investors that are mortgage lenders, there are credit unions, there are what are called mortgage brokers that work with a few different banks and credit unions and things like that, right? There is, you know, seller financing in like, one or two a couple percent of transactions in the US, things like that. But I think that as buyers, when you first start thinking about the market, oftentimes the real estate agent is the first person you speak to. No disrespect to my fellow real estate agents, but not all of them have a broad understanding of mortgage. So sometimes they're just like, oh, this lender is my friend. He likes me, he does a good job, so he's going to be the right fit for this buyer, right? Not always true. Um, the buyer may need a special scenario that that lender can't help with, right? And sometimes that lender I've seen, they'll say to them, "Oh, well, you can't get what you want because of this, right? Sorry, we don't offer that or whatever, right?" And the buyer will feel super disappointed and say, "Okay, sorry, we talked to so and so, and they said we can't get a loan." And then all of a sudden now it's like, okay, well, that's that's not true, right? Like I'll talk to someone and say, hey, tell me, I'll ask them a few questions and I'll be able to help them. But, I think that there's just like a lot of rough information out there. And the idea that anyone is the same, whether it's a lender, attorney, a home inspector, a mortgage broker, is totally negates people's ability to be good at their jobs and be good communicators. All right. So, all right, we made it through the myths, right? Now, let's talk about the first things to do if you want to buy a house, right? So, talk about some of the stuff that's here. I think the first one is understanding your monthly budget, right? So, what do you pay now? How much money do you make now? How much money do you take home now, right? What do your bills cost right now, right? What kind of monthly debts are you working with, right? Because remember, as a renter, you have the ability to move, right? Renting is relatively flexible, right? You sign a lease, you're out of the lease, and it's like, okay, you move somewhere else, right? And now, granted, obviously, I know, and I'm empathetic to the fact the rental market is, definitely going up, 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 up right now. So I think that there's anyways, but you can move, right? So in terms of budget, you should have a good idea. If you guys need a budget tracker, I have a little template that we're happy to share with you here. It just kind of talks about things like salary, maybe any other kinds of income you have, like interest income, or maybe you already own a rental property or something, or maybe you're getting like dividend income or something. I mean, I don't know. Like it's like there's a bunch of different things that we put on there, like a pension, maybe you're getting alimony, who knows what the situation is, right? And talks about your expenses, like lay them out, right? Because again, if you don't, this is how people get cost burdened when they buy housing, right? Is they're not really correctly prepared for the world that is in front of them, right? In terms of their total budget, and then they end up getting a little bit too overextended, right? And things hurt. So the budget's the first thing. Okay. Next thing would be a home ownership class. Why do I say that? So you're already here. If you're coming today, you're already in a home ownership class. So thank you. But there's more, right? So Fannie Mae, which is quasi-government institution that insures a lot of mortgages and a lot of conventional loans in the US. They offer some free education on their site. It's like it teaches you about things like debt to income ratio and just like some of the more beginning stages of becoming home buyer, right? There's a lot of information out there. It's just super duper duper helpful in this, right? So homeownership class would be my second step. Budget first, homeownership class third. Okay. Free credit report, right? So people will be like, oh, there's a lot of agencies out there like Credit Karma and things like that, or like even banks offer you like a look at your sort of credit score. But the one that the lender is really going to look at is not the one that you see on a Credit Karma or Chase or something like that. They're going to pull the tri-merged credit report from TransUnion, Experian, excuse me, the all of the credit agencies. And you want to, but again, so you yourself has the ability to get a free credit report once a year. So why would you want to do that? Well, let's say there's an inaccuracy in the report, right? You want to dispute that. You want to start calling the creditor, right? And working to correct that, right? Like, let's say that somebody, God forbid, like took out a card in your name or you're the victim of identity theft or something like that, right? You want to have an understanding of that. So having an idea of your credit report can go a long way, all right? So you got your credit together, you got your budget together, you've taken a home ownership class, you feel like you're pretty ready to go, right? So let's talk now about the home buying process, right? An agent for a lot of home buyers is the first step, right? I think it's a good first step, right? Good agents can kind of help you understand expectations, like how the markets are going, where you are. Like real estate is hyper local, right? So, what's happening if your friend, even on one side of town, might be different than what you're experiencing, where you would want to buy, right? A good agent is also going to have a good network, right? So, for example, we always send our clients to three lenders. The reason that we do that is we want to get people in the process of choice, right? So you should talk to a few lenders, right? And see sort of, hey, who do I click with, right? Who understands my scenario? Who's giving me good advice, right? Who's not just trying to sell me, right? The same thing of agents too. I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? Like I would love to be every single person's agent in the United States, right? But I can't. And sometimes I'm the right fit for people, sometimes I'm not, right? So, getting a good agent, getting a good lender, I think are the first kind of steps, right? Now, okay, you talk to these people, you want to kind of getting a pre-approval is good. Level sets your expectations. It gives you a good anchor of what your monthly payments would be, right? And allows you to actually, if you do find the house that you love, and let's say it checks all the boxes, right? Now you're ready to actually make the offer, right? And I think a lot of people, again, going back to the beginning, will say like, oh, well, I'll find the house first and then I'll get a pre-approval and I'll do that. I'm telling you guys, the markets, even today, are pretty strong, right? So the right houses that are priced well will sell quickly, right? Like within a couple of days sometimes, right? So having that pre-approval will allow you to more confidently make an offer when you're ready. You don't want to try to shoehorn it in altogether. So what will you usually need for a pre-approval? Lender will give you a list, right? A lot of applications are online today. And so you'll need things like tax records, pay stubs, account statements, things like that, right? So lender will help you understand all that stuff. Hello, Suzette, how are you? All right,
I
so,
am doing well.
oh,
Thank you.
good, good, good. Good to see you. Good to see you. So you get the pre-approval. Everything's good to go, right? Your next step is going to be start looking at houses, right? So work with your agent, try to get a feel for like, when you're both available, things like that. Try to get a feel for the neighborhoods that you're looking at. Like when you first start looking at houses right after you've got the pre-approval, please like don't feel under the gun to start making offers. And you're not like you shouldn't put yourself in a time crunch of a housing search, right? To buy, right? Because that's how you make a mistake when you buy a house. You should give yourself time to really feel the market out a little bit, get to understand the inventory in the area, things like that, right? So sometimes like when I talk to people, I'm like, hey, you know what, guys, we're just going out. We're just looking at properties today. No pressure. We're just getting a feel for things, right? Like, you know, you might have lived in an apartment your whole life, right? And now we're going to look at four-story brownstones or something. It's going to be a different feeling, right? Looking at those two things. So, start looking at homes a little bit, things like that. Hold on, everyone, hold on to anyone who's watching on YouTube. Suzette, I'm just going through our first time home buyer seminar today. So you're about in the middle of it right now. So if it's valuable to you, my friend, hang out and join us. And if you have any questions, anything I'm talking about, feel free to ask. Super early days, super early stages for everyone here. Okay. All right. Find the home you love. You want to buy it. You've already moved in, you've already moved your furniture in, things like that before you've even made the offer. You're like ready to go. It's all done. It's all good to go, right? But it's not that easy, right? You have to, of course, make an offer. Seller, of course, has to accept the offer, and it has to be within a price range that if you're getting a loan, a lender will allow you to buy for, right? So when I say make a smart offer, I think that your agent, when you're starting to work with a real estate agent, they should be explaining to you what the offer process looks like, what's involved in it, what you're going to need early. Like I often with my clients will sit down and we'll walk through just like what the offer making process looks like long before they're even interested in buying a house, right? And the reason is it's because I'm telling you guys, for properties that are priced right, they move, right? They will not stick around. It's just literally last week in a multiple bid situation of had four different offers in the property. So our buyer had to make a snap decision on buying it. Thank God we've been working with them for about a year now. So they had a good base, right? So we were confident they understood all the information required, pre-approval was updated, things like that. And we already knew sort of what kind of things to think about in the negotiation, right? So, you know, people often think it's just price and it's just price a lot of times, but there's so much more that goes into an offer, right? So you're buying a property of tenants. Do you want to keep those tenants? Do you want those tenants to be do you want the house to be vacant, right? Okay, are you asking for a seller concession? Are you asking for the seller to pay some closing costs, or are you paying them all? Do you even know what the closing costs are, right? Things like that, right? What kind of closing timeline, right? Does the seller, let's say that you're making an offer on a home and the seller says, okay, yep, sure, we want to sell it to you, but guess what? We want to rent it back for 6 months after you close. Relatively common, maybe not that long, but there are many sellers that will need to close on a property and get the funds in their account so they can go and move on to their next step, right? So if you don't know these things going into the offer process and you're just saying, I'll give you $1 million, take it or leave it, you're just not really fully grasping the process, right? You know, Also you want to have a good you want to have a good frame of reference for the comparable sales, like huge, like, are you overpaying for this house? Are we stealing it from them? Are you underpaying for this house? Like, where are you falling into the cycle of price, right? Again, these are things that, like, let's say that you've identified a neighborhood that you want to work at. Your agent should be showing you what things are selling for like much earlier, right? So you have a good expectation level setting of what's happening in the market. Hey, is everything selling in multiple bids at 10% over ask? Well, okay, you probably want to know that, right? Are things sitting in the market for 400 days of no offers? Probably want to know that too, right? Why is that happening? What's going on? Is everything overpriced? Is everyone just batshit crazy in this neighborhood? Like whatever the situation is, right? You want to have a good price. So making a smart offer that goes into that. Okay. All right. So moving right along, everything works out. You make an offer, and the seller says, "Okay, we're ready to shake our hand and work with you." Right? In New York State, you're going to go from. This is different depending on what state you're in. Now you're going to go from the accepted offer. If in some states, the actual offer that you make is you write a contract to the seller, And if the seller countersigns that contract, now you're just automatically in contract, and now you're going into your contingency phase where you're thinking about certain due diligence in the property, property inspections, things like that. In New York State, that part of the process is reversed. So in New York State, we are what's called an attorney state, which means a real estate attorney must be part of every real estate transaction. So if you get an accepted offer in New York, it doesn't really, it means that you and the seller have an agreement in principle, but they are not bound to you. You are not bound to them. So now, well, the next phase that will happen in New York is you'll have an attorney on your side. The sellers will have an attorney on their side. And to some degree, it's in their hands to get the deal over the finish line, right? So the seller's attorney will then bring your attorney a contract. They will go back and forth and riders and markups and things like that. And what you're trying to get to, meanwhile, your attorney is also doing some due diligence, things like that. In the event that you're buying a condo or co-op, they're potentially reading like financial statements or looking at building meeting minutes for any potential like work. They're looking for any red flags, right? And, you know, this also happens in the townhouse world, right? Like we're looking for kind of very obvious red flags, right? Like, hey, are there all of a sudden 40 public violations on this house that we didn't know about, right? Is there something that is like happening that, you know, maybe we had the agreement with, but now when the seller sends us the contract, they've decided to sort of change the terms, right? Like crazy stuff like that that happens, right? So anyways, you make it through all that stuff, everything's all good to go. You're ready to sign the contract, right? In New York, you sign a contract, and at that point, you submit your escrow deposit. Traditionally, about 10% of the purchase price in New York. And let's say you're putting 20% down. 10% of the purchase price generally is what is consideration on the contract signing. 10% is then would of the remaining down payment would be due at closing. It's not always how it goes. There are deals in which that down payment, that escrow deposit is lower, it's higher, depends on the agreement that you make with the seller, part of writing a smart offer, right? So you sign the contract, you send your escrow deposit, you send your deposit to the seller. Only at the point when they countersign the contract and the deposit clears, the funds clear, now you're officially in contract, right? Anytime before that, you are not, right? So you could really go as far in a real estate deal in New York as signing a contract, wiring the attorney the escrow deposit, and the seller just says, you know what? Sorry, it's cloudy today. I decided to change my mind. I don't want to sell anymore. Take a hike. And then they legally have to send you back the escrow deposit, of course, because that's why we have, it's one of the reasons that there are attorneys, so that these things, this money is held in a safe space, right? And they can't just take it. But people often think that like when they get an accepted offer, they're in contract. They think the moment that they put ink on the paper, they're in contract. Nope. And nope, you're not in contract in New York until you sign, seller signs, deposit clears. Okay, fantastic. So you made it to contracts, right? Next stop, you are, well, okay, sorry, this is where my presentation is off. I have inspections over here, but we're in New York, so flip these two things, right? We should talk about inspections though. Home inspectors are not created equal. I will tell you guys of working with many of them. There are many states in the US that it is not required that a home inspector even has a license, which is like criminal in my opinion, but it's the fact, right? So New York, thank God, is a state in which a home inspector is required to carry a license. However, that does not get you out of the woods, right? Meaning in many respects, with a home inspector, you get what you pay for. You should absolutely talk to, depending on the property you're buying, I feel like people should talk to multiple home inspectors personally and get a feel for what they do. They should have an understanding of what the home inspection is, what's contained in it, things like that, right? And they should just they should try to kind of ask the inspector some gotcha questions, right? Because this person kind of has your future like sanity in their hands, right? What I mean by that is like, okay, you buy a house and all of a sudden this home inspector misses like 7 things in the house that are wrong. Well, you sign the deed, you get the deed, you buy the house, and they're gone, agent's gone, lender's gone, and your foundation is now caving in. So not cool, right? So you want to make sure that the inspector that you're working with is vetted, right? I tell people all the time, like I have a great home inspector I work with, but I'm like, don't just call him, please, for the love of God, don't just call him. Call him and call at least one or two other people and compare, right? I'll send people like what a sample inspection report looks like, just so they can understand sort of from a baseline level of what's in it, right? This is super important, especially in New York City. Like if you're buying flipped houses, like I will tell you guys that people think when they're buying a flipped house, they're buying something new, like super clean, no issues, no whatsoever, right? That really depends on your developer and the person on the other side of the table. How what quality of work is the construction work? If someone's telling you that they're gutting the house, did they really gut the house, or did they just put sheetrock over existing sheetrock and put a new floor on top of another floor that was already molded? Like did they just cover up things like termite damage or something like that? Like these are all real things that happen, right? And you guys can look on YouTube and you can look at like people's like horror stories of horrible home inspections, and then they moved into the house and all of a sudden they're now out of pocket 200 grand for things they didn't even think about. Um, so please, for the love of God, do not skimp on this step. In 20, just to give you guys a little bit of, not to get too wordy on this, but to give you guys a little bit, 2021, 2022, when rates were like 2.5% and 3%, people were literally foregoing their home inspection. They were buying houses and saying, "Oh, nope, don't need that, right? No problem." And I pray for those people, for anyone that did that they did not run into any enforcement issues. All right. So, okay. Now, home inspection good, contract good, everything's good, right? Now, at that point, you're obviously starting the mortgage process, right? So now there's going to be deadlines within that contract that you guys sign if you're getting a loan. Generally, how many days from the date of the contract signing in order to the date of getting what's called a mortgage commitment letter. Along the way, there's a lot of things that are going to be happening, right, on your side. You're going to start your loan application. You're talking to your mortgage loan officer. You're going to be talking to processors. They're going to be grabbing all your docs. They're going to be asking you for more docs and more docs and more docs. And then ask you for the same thing that you just sent them yesterday. It's going to annoy you. It's going to you're going to find the mortgage process itself to be overwhelming and somewhat annoying, right? I worked in the industry. I can tell you guys, as much as I tried to change it, I couldn't control everyone else around me. And yeah, be prepared, right? I'll just say that. Be prepared, right? So you want to stay on top of these things, right? Now, a good agent, right, is not just going to like say, okay, cool, go get a mortgage and let me know how it goes, right? They're going to be interfacing with the lender. They're going to be keeping the seller updated. They're going to be harassing your attorney to get the title report in. They're going to be doing other things that come into play here that are kind of keeping the deal on track, right? Remember, as agents, right? Yes, we represent you, but we fight for the deal as well. There's a huge part of like somebody having to be the boss of the deal. And sometimes with you and like the buyer and all the other things that they have to deal with, the agent has to be the bad guy, right? So one of the things I take a lot of pride in is calling lenders and just harassing them and checking for updates and pillaging them and making sure that they're doing their job, because I'm telling you guys, especially like some folks that just like, I didn't get to it yet. I didn't do that yet. Sorry. No, no, just it's a mess, right? So deadlines are super key. You need to be established of your team, right? To make sure you're on. All right. You made it through everything. All right. So there's a lot of stuff that happens here. Titles being cleared, mortgages getting approved, conditions are being sort of pushed away to get that mortgage to the closing table, right? But everything, let's say that we've now made it through all of these things, right? Mortgage is approved, title is clear, conditions are approved, and you get that happy email from your lenders that say you're clear to close. Great, hallelujah. Now, if all goes well, and I'll tell you guys that a lot of times it doesn't. It doesn't go swimmingly perfectly just like that. There's always like things that come up, and delays and drags and all that stuff, right? But let's say everything is all good. You're now ready to actually close the house. One of the last things that you're going to want to do before you close that house is do a final walkthrough of the property. So why do you do a final walkthrough? Well, number one, you saw the house at this point, probably like 45, 50 days ago, 60 days ago, maybe more, right? You want to make sure that the house you're buying, the same house that you saw a month and a half ago, right? I have walked into situations where, like, literally we looked at a house, we went into contract in March, and we're getting ready to do the final walkthrough, and someone says to me, "Oh, we forgot to tell you, we've had a structural issue in the house, and there's something significant with like the foundation or something massive like that has happened in this period," which is insane, but it actually happened to me once, right? You know, you're going to be looking for things like leaks. You're going to be making sure like that the seller occupies the house and they have to go, that they're gone, right? Have they moved out, right? Are they still there? If you have the contingency that the house needs to be delivered vacant and you get to the walkthrough the day before you're supposed to close and the seller hasn't even packed yet, you ain't closing tomorrow, right? I'm sorry. Like, you want to, but unless you're going to make a deal that allows the seller to stay there, you know, that they haven't fulfilled their contingency, right? So there's a lot of things that happen on that. All right. But hallelujah, let's say you make it there. Um, you make it through the walkthrough and you are at the closing day. All right. Let's quickly go through what happens at a closing. So closings are, it's an exciting day. It's an emotional day, right? You're going to be writing a lot of checks on the closing day, and you're going to be signing a lot of papers on closing day. So real estate closing a lot of times takes around 2 hours, maybe more. I've had closings that have taken 8 hours. I've had closings that have taken 30 minutes. But 2 hours is what most of mine have landed on as an average. Um, at the closing table, you're going to be signing, if you're getting a mortgage, you're going to be signing about a gazillion documents that make sure that you're going to pay that mortgage, right? You better come there with your hand ready, your hand flexible and ready to sign, because you're going to sign about 100 times that day. Let's say that, right? You're also, of course, going to make sure that at closing table, you're getting all the keys, your whatever is getting filed, your attorney is collecting whatever documents need to be filed in the city to record the deed, things like that, right? And the mortgage and transfer documents and things like that. And, hopefully, if all goes well, if you still like your agent, take a photo of them or something like that and hold up the big key or something, the big key or all that stuff you see out there. If you don't like your agent, kick them to the curb, tell them, "Sorry, Damon, I hate you. Never talk to me again." Hopefully that doesn't happen. But yeah, so it's a big day. Remember your closing day, right? I tell you, it's like, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I have people that remember like just the little bits and pieces of how magical closing day was for them when they kind of like are crying at the closing table, and like it's super emotional moment for a lot of people. All right. So anyways, that is that. These steps, a little summary of that stuff here, FAQs. We talked about all this stuff. But in the interest of anyone's time, I think we actually, all right, I'll just go through these FAQs, these questions that I got. How do you find a good agent? My recommendation is don't simply hire a friend or a referral exclusively. Always interview 3 real estate agents for any transaction. Like, do not just hire me because you think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, or like your friend says Damon's awesome. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Hire me only if you've done your diligence in talking to at least 2, if not 3, or even more people to make sure that the agent that you're going to pick aligns with your values, is going to be able to appropriately talk to you about timing, schedules, things like that, understands the market that you want to buy in, is accountable, has, references, experience, things like that, right? How do you find a good lender? Well, you don't just go with the lender that your agent recommends, simply. Just please don't do that. Same thing with finding a good real estate agent. You should always, 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 always talk to three lenders. I try to recommend three lenders to everybody, but I always encourage people to have the conversations because for a few reasons. Number one, not all lenders are the same. Not all lenders offer the same products. Not all lenders are the same availability. Not all lenders have the same experience. I will tell you guys, when I was an agent, before I had my little honeymoon as a mortgage lender, I didn't when I had I did not know as much about mortgage as I do now after I spent a year and a half in that industry, right? At the time, I thought I was referring the best agents I possibly could to everyone, and I think I was for the most part. But then when I became a mortgage lender, I learned about 50,000 things that blew my mind about the home buying process that I never knew, even though by that point I had already sold $100 million in real estate, right? So talk to lenders, ask questions. There's no question it's too stupid to ask a lender. Like, seriously, this is your money, guys, and you want to make 1000% sure that the person that's going to send you a loan and put you into debt, it has your best interest in heart, right? No one wants to get a mortgage. No one in America wants a mortgage, right? But if you're going to have one, which a lot of us have, I have, millions of other people have, you better make damn sure that the person that's giving it to you is someone that aligns with your values. They explain the process to you, they help you get the right product, and they're accountable. Okay. What kind of property should I look to buy? I'm a conservative person. So what I will tell you guys is everything I said about the lenders and all that stuff. Sorry, drilling going on in the apartment right now, guys. I'm doing this. Sorry about that. But a lender will often pre-approve you more than what might be right for you to buy. And I see this all the time, right? People will get pre-approved for a mortgage for like a house purchase price of like $1.5 million, right? And they'll say, Damon, I only want to look at houses that are at 1.499 to $1.6 million. I'm like, why? That's like the maximum, top of the maximum that you can get, right? Have you done your budget yet? Have you like looked at what your monthly payments would look like? Things like that, right? And I get it, right? Housing prices are super duper duper expensive right now. Rates are high, inventory is low. Trifecta of not so awesome things, right? But when I say conservative, I say remember that you have to pay this, you have to make these payments every month, right? You have to make your principal and an interest payment. You have to make your tax payment. You have to make your insurance payment. You're buying a condo or co-op, or you have an HOA, you have to make your HOA payment. You have to make your utility payment. You have to make your Wi-Fi payment. You have to have some money left to go buy food at the end of the month. You got to pay for your cell phone. You got a Netflix subscription. You got a Hulu account over here, right? You know, you go to the gym and you have $100 gym membership. You got a car payment. You know what I mean? Like, these things add up, right? So even if a lender says that you can spend maybe like 45% of your monthly income on a housing principal and interest payment, maybe that's not the right situation for you guys. So I am conservative. I think that you should try to look at properties in a variety of categories, but don't try to look at things that are going to push you into a place of uncomfortability. Okay, final question on the ones that you guys all sent a meetup. Thank you for that. What are your thoughts on the housing market? It's tough right now for everybody except for sellers sitting in a ton of equity that are just willing to sell their house and ride off into the sunset, right? Home buyers right now are prospective home buyers are experiencing a payment shock like we've probably never seen, because mortgage rates are higher than they've been in the last like 20 so years. Prices are at all-time highs, and because there's not a lot of inventory in the market, in a lot of markets, it's still very competitive for the little inventory there is. Now, we're starting to see some cracks in that, depending where we are in the country. If you're in New York, unfortunately, it's still a very low inventory environment. Sorry, We're still like 30% behind where we were even in like 2019 before the pandemic in terms of total available properties to buy. If you're in Austin, Texas, or if you're in Florida, it's a little bit different. Like there's a ton of properties on the market in Austin, Texas right now, right? There's a ton of properties on the market in Florida. It's a buyer's market right now in those cities, right? So the biggest thing is that it's hyper local, right? What's happening in New York may not be the same thing that's happening in Texas. That may not be the same thing that's happening in Montana or Nebraska or whatever, right? I think my perspective is this. I think that you never want to push yourself to buy a home if it's going to be uncomfortable. I think you've got to be ready to buy a home. The people that I would want to talk to are the people that can buy a home, can comfortably buy a home, but they're sitting on the sidelines and saying, like, I'm waiting for interest rates to go down. I get it, right? It is an admirable thought, right? However, you've got to think about it like this, right? You got to say to yourself, look at some facts, right? There are 7.9, according to Zillow Research, I just read this article like today. There are 7.9 million households in America that could afford to take on a mortgage payment, but are choosing to rent instead, right? And that's at like 7% rates, right? So now let's say that rates were to tick down to 6%, right? Because of that lower payment, how many more buyers does that bring into the pool of buyers, right? And what does that do for competition in the housing inventory that is there? Let's say that rates got down to 5%, right? How many more millions of buyers does that bring into the buying pool, right? So my question for anyone is sort of like, hey, we'll just wait for the price drop or wait for the interest rate drop. Number one, are you seeing signs of total distress in the real estate market, or are you seeing your cost of rent go up, your cost of food go up? Are you seeing your cost of housing go up? Are you seeing like what kind of trends are you really seeing, right? Are you seeing like housing on like real estate agents setting themselves on fire because they can't sell anything? Or are you seeing like just not a lot of inventory and not a lot of sellers and prices having generally growth or stability, right? Because I just don't know if the conditions get better for you in the way that you think they might. Because yes, it would be awesome if all of a sudden the inventory in the market tripled, if prices flatlined, if all of a sudden rent started declining and like everything was like this hunky dory, like economic, like supercharged, super battery in the back for everybody. However, we are not building enough houses in America. We're still millions of houses short in America. As far as I checked, institutional hedge funds and syndicates and all the people I used to talk to for years about like building their own little companies to go buy a million houses, they're still here. They're still buying houses, right? They're not going away. And I just would encourage everyone, regardless if you want to buy in 2024, 2025, or 2035, that you start your educational journey now. Really understand things at a deeper level and try to get yourself ahead of everyone who is just having tunnel vision that thinks that everything is just going to fall into their lap in the way that they want it to, right? I pray that it does for you. I pray that it does for me. I'm sick of the housing market. I've been at it forever, but it's unfortunately in the last 100 years, it's kind of been up and to the right. So here we are. All right, guys, that's it for me. Questions, if anyone has any questions for me, stick around to do them. If you guys want to find me, all of my contact info is here. Just as a refresher, Damon Bodine, 10 years in the market, about 150 families helped at this point in the home buying journey. Been a mortgage lender. I used to be a rental property investor. I got out of that world. I am now just a real estate agent. But I got all this experience behind me, so I wanted to use it for good. So here I am. All right, cool. Stop the share. I'll hang out if anyone wants to chat. Thanks so much, everyone. Cheers. All right. Any questions, concerns, hellos, anything? How are you, Suzette?
I'm good. I'm doing all right. Thank you. Yeah, I have a question actually.
Oh, good. Oh, and
Um,
also since, I apologize. I saw you called me a few weeks ago and I just got back from overseas. So I'm just sort of
did you?
catching up in my life. So forgive me, I was away for a bit.
Okay, no worries.
But your question.
Um, title of the property,
Hmm.
if it's logged incorrectly, isn't it the title company's responsibility?
I would believe so.
Yeah,
Uh
they're trying to throw it off on everybody else.
really?
I
Well, they
talk to your
insured it,
lender.
right?
Huh?
They insure you mean for a property that you are buying or something that you already bought
Already bought.
and has a
Yeah,
title issue on it?
yeah.
Uh, so that's the one area of the business that I have not worked in. But I will say that just on base level, if they insured the title, they should absolutely make sure it was recorded correctly. Like that would seem pretty logical that it's on them, you know?
Yeah, they're telling me, oh, it's the lender, oh, it's the realtor. I'm like,
Uh,
it's you guys.
maybe you should threaten to sue them. That's usually how things get done and get done in America, right? So I don't know. Um, I'm not sure, but I do run into my title rep from like maybe once a month or something like that. I'm happy to ask her.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. How have you been? How's everything?
All right, I'm good now. I was sick for a couple of months.
Oh no.
Yeah, from since December.
Yeah.
I'm walking with a cane and everything.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
actually trying not to walk without it. It
Let me stop.
started with the flu.
Let me stop the recording on this just so we're not recording this information. So that's not
Oh,
okay. Good. Yeah,
okay.
I don't want you to talk about you. Not there's no one is seeing what we're doing,
Yeah.
right? It's just me and you right now.
Okay.
But yeah, that's that. I'm sorry. But you're better now?
Yeah, better. Yeah, because I can actually function again.